All right, so we've got this legal situation, right? And it's kind of wild. It involves the New York City mayor, Eric Adams, and it all started with a judge's ruling.
Yeah, this isn't your everyday courtroom disagreement, is it? We're talking about some potentially serious questions about how the Department of Justice, the DOJ, has been acting.
Yeah, exactly. And this ruling, it's a hefty one, a full 78 pages. Judge Dale Ho, he really laid out some pretty surprising things that were going on with the DOJ.
Oh, he definitely didn't mince words. You can tell from the language he used that he was concerned, particularly with the DOJ's motivations and reasoning behind their actions.
So that's what we're going to do in this deep dive today. We're going to break down this ruling piece by piece. We're going to unpack why Judge Ho came to the conclusions that he did.
Yeah, and we'll also look at the wider picture, what this means for the DOJ and how they operate.
Exactly, because this has implications that go way beyond just this one case.
Absolutely. And to really understand the gravity of this situation, we need to rewind a bit, back to when Mayor Adams was facing some pretty serious criminal charges. Bribery, conspiracy, you name it, wire fraud, the whole 9 yards. He was even preparing for trial.
Right, and then Donald Trump gets elected, and suddenly the DOJ wants to dismiss the whole case. Now, you might think, okay, maybe they found new evidence or something, right? But it's how they wanted to dismiss it that really raises red flags.
That's the key here, isn't it? They wanted to dismiss it without prejudice. Now, for our listeners, what that means is that they could basically hit the pause button on this case, but keep the option to bring those same charges again at any point in the future.
So, like, they could just hold this over his head forever.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool. And in this case, Judge Ho decided that the DOJ shouldn't have that power. That's what he ultimately took away.
Wow. And the alleged reasoning behind this tactic, that's where it gets really interesting and a little concerning.
Oh yeah, this is where it gets juicy. So according to Judge Ho, as Kirshner explained, the DOJ wanted to use the threat of future prosecution as leverage to get Mayor Adams to cooperate with President Trump's immigration policies.
So they weren't necessarily interested in justice in this particular case. They wanted to use it as a bargaining chip to push a specific agenda.
That's how it appears, based on the ruling. And that's a huge problem. I mean, think about it. The Department of Justice shouldn't be wielding its power like that, should it?
Right. That's a pretty serious accusation. And Judge Ho, he definitely saw it that way too. He flat out rejected the DOJ's motion to dismiss without prejudice. Instead, he dismissed it with prejudice.
Which is a huge distinction because now the government can't bring these charges against Mayor Adams again. Ever. That door is closed for good.
So he wasn't playing around.
No, not at all. And the way he dismantled the DOJ's justifications, it's really something. You can tell he was carefully considering their arguments and found them seriously lacking.
Well, let's go through them one by one, shall we? So the DOJ argued that continuing the case would interfere with Mayor Adams' ability to, do his job as mayor, govern effectively, and also support federal immigration initiatives.
Right. But Judge Ho didn't buy that. He looked at the evidence and said, nope, I don't see it. There was no real basis for this claim, no concrete evidence to support it.
So strike one for the DOJ. What about their argument that there was an appearance of impropriety surrounding the case?
That's where Judge Ho really got fired up.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said, look, the prosecutors who initially brought these charges, they were working under the Biden administration. They're career professionals. They followed all the rules. There's no evidence of anything improper.
So basically, the very people the Trump DOJ was trying to blame were actually from a completely different administration and had followed proper procedure.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It completely undermines their argument. And then they try to say that the timing of the charges was fishy, that it amounted to election interference because it happened close to the mayoral primary.
So they were playing the election interference card. Did that work?
No, Judge Ho shut that down too. He pointed out that the timing was perfectly normal, consistent with how similar cases have been handled in the past. Nothing unusual there.
Okay, so their arguments are falling apart left and right. And that leads us to what's been called the money line of this ruling. Judge Ho concludes that the whole appearance of impropriety argument was actually just a pretext.
Yeah, and Kirshner explains that pretextual, in this context, means it was basically a phony excuse. They were trying to hide their real motivation.
Like they were saying one thing but doing another.
Exactly. And that brings us to Emil B., the DOJ official that Kirshner specifically called out in his analysis.
It sounds like Judge Ho basically pointed the finger at him.
He definitely did. The ruling heavily implies that Emil B. was the driving force behind this whole thing, trying to get the case dismissed for what the judge considered to be the wrong reasons.
And now, because of this ruling, he might be facing even more scrutiny from the Bar Council, right?
Right. That's right. And remember, this is on top of the multiple bar complaints that had already been filed against him by various people and organizations.
Yeah, people like New York State Senator Brad Hoylman-Segal and groups like American Oversight. They were already raising concerns about his conduct.
Exactly. And Judge Ho's findings just add fuel to the fire. So, yeah, things aren't looking too good for Emil B. right now.
Let's go back to the immigration enforcement rationale for a second. This was the idea that they wanted to dismiss the charges against Mayor Adams so he could help them with their immigration policies.
Yeah, this was a big one. Judge Ho called it unprecedented and breathtaking. And for good reason. He saw it as a potential quid pro quo. You do this for us, and we'll drop the charges.
And Kirshner mentioned that Mayor Adams actually did agree to allow ICE to operate at Rikers Island after the DOJ filed their motion to dismiss. That doesn't look good, does it?
No, it certainly feeds into that quid pro quo narrative.
Yeah.
And Judge Ho explicitly said that it smacks of a bargain. There's no precedent for the government doing something like this, dismissing charges against an elected official just so they can push their policy goals.
So this wasn't just some minor legal technicality. This was a serious overreach of power.
Absolutely. And it really undermines the principle of equal justice under the law, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like they were saying, if you agree with us politically, we'll treat you differently in the justice system. That's not how it's supposed to work.
And Judge Ho called them out on that. He said that this idea is fundamentally incompatible with the basic promise of equal justice under the law. And he's right. Justice shouldn't be a political weapon.
And you know, it's bad when even people inside the DOJ were uncomfortable with what was happening.
Oh, yeah. Remember all those attorneys who resigned rather than sign the motion to dismiss?
Yeah.
That speaks volumes.
These were experienced professionals who were so troubled by what they saw that they were willing to walk away from their jobs. That's a powerful statement.
It really is. And Judge Ho's ruling basically vindicates them, doesn't it? It confirms that their concerns were valid.
Absolutely. So to sum it all up, we've got Judge Ho dismissing the case against Mayor Adams with prejudice, meaning it's over for good. But more importantly, he's sending a clear message to the DOJ that they can't use the justice system to advance their political agendas.
Exactly. And he's shining a light on some potentially unethical behavior, especially by Emil B., who's now facing serious consequences.
This whole situation really makes you think about the dangers of letting politics interfere with the pursuit of justice.
It's a slippery slope, isn't it? And it raises some important questions for all of us. What happens when the justice system becomes a tool for political gain? What does that mean for the rule of law?
Those are some big questions and ones that we all need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. This case might be over, but the conversation about justice and fairness is far from finished.
And that's something we all need to keep in mind. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a wild ride.
It has indeed.
Yeah.
And until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep those critical thinking caps on.
You got it.